Welcome to Breaking the Cycle with Dr. Simply Ann. This is season 2, and we thank you for following us. We thank you for supporting us. We thank you for viewing the show, the talk show at the TV15 um, website, also on the YouTube, on our social media platform. Last year, 2025, was an amazing year. It was a year with challenges, and we had many episodes and many guests in the room. But this year is not about only fixing behavior. It's about healing the wound that taught you how to survive. Let me say this again, because some of you have spent your whole life trying to fix what was never broken, only wounded. Again, welcome to Breaking the Cycle. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Simply Ann. And tonight, we are not just starting a new season, a new episode in 2026. We are opening a new year, a new posture, and a new conversation. Tonight, we begin a soul healing series because many of the patterns we are fighting did not start with choices. They started with hurt, pain, before language, before memory, before we even had a voice. Some of you were already learning how to survive before you even knew what survival meant. And if you don't understand where a cycle began, you will keep fighting symptoms instead of healing the source. 2026 is not a year of performance. It is a year of confrontation with compassion. Because you cannot break a cycle you keep calling personality. You cannot heal what you keep spiritualizing away. And you cannot move forward while bleeding backward. If you're still bleeding this year is for you. Let me say it clearly, slowly, honestly. Many people are powerful, but not healed. Many people are gifted, but fragmented. Many people have learned how to function, how to show up, how to smile, how to perform, how to succeed without ever learning how to feel safe. And when the soul is injured early, at a very young, tender age, the body adapts, the mind compensates, the nervous system recalibrates. That's where cycles are born. Not in rebellion, not in weakness, but because you wanted to self-sabotage, but in survival. Survival taught many, including myself, at a point in time in my life, how to stay alert. Survival taught me and taught many how to brace. Survival taught me and many how to disconnect. Survival taught you how to endure. And survival kept many of us alive. But survival was never meant to lead our lives. This series is not about blame, it's about responsibility. Not responsibility for what happened to you per se, but responsibility for what it produced in you. Because what happens to you will eventually come true. It will flow out of you if it's never healed. So this series is healing the soul. Share it with someone. Call someone. Continue logging in every Tuesday on TV, the TV15 app. You can watch it also on our YouTube, social media. Make sure you tune in and don't miss not even one episode. If you're that one that identify with what I just said. I recently released my book, My mother's choice, my destiny. This is a title that the Lord gave me over 7 years ago. When I struggled with the theme, I couldn't understand why my mother's choice became my destiny. And I need you to understand something. I did not write this book to be impressive. I wrote it to be honest. And chapter one is not comfortable in this book because chapter one doesn't start with my voice. It starts before I could have spoken, before I could have verbalized it, before I had emotions, before I even didn't even know who I was. It started before explanation, before defense, before consent. Chapter one of my book tells a truth that many people avoid the entire lives. The sum of the most defining moments of our lives happened before we had words to express them. Before we even could have said, it hurts. Before we could have said, this here that happened to me was wrong. Before we could have said, this is not mine to carry. In chapter one, I don't write from memory alone. I wrote from my body, from what the body remembers when the mind had no language. Because trauma does not need words to register, it needs impact. Long before I had a voice, my body was already learning patterns. And some of you know exactly what I mean. Some of you watching tonight were shaped by the environments you did not choose, decisions that were made around you, not by you. Yet those decisions shape everything concerning you. How you attach, how you trust, how you show up, how you respond to love, how you protect yourself, how you brace for disappointment. Later in life, people judge us for our behavior without ever asking where it originated, without ever asking, why is it you behave this way? Why is it I am who I am? Some people call us dramatic. Some said we are overwhelmed. We are distant. We are unsafe. Or we're too controlling. But we simply were trying to survive chaos. Chaos in our mind, chaos in our heart, chaos in our emotion. All our behavior, they were not too much. It was just too much to carry. And we became exactly what happened to us. Things that happened to us for very, very long. So we learned to survive. And we became very intelligent in survival. Many of you watching me tonight became expert to survive and adapt to protect. So survival is not identity. And if survival becomes identity, cycles guarantee. Going in cycle will become guarantee once survival becomes our identity. That's how cycles will form. That's the reason I'm so passionate with this talk show, Breaking the Cycle. And to be able to break cycles, we must understand and pay attention how cycles will form. Cycles are formed when a wound deep down within us never healed. The body creates a strategy, and that strategy might look like being hyper independence. I don't need anyone. I become a people pleasing. Or if I can keep everyone happy, I will be safe. Or emotional shutdown. If I don't feel it, it won't hurt me. So I will numb my emotion. Or attraction to unavailable people because chaos feels so familiar. We won't stay too long because leaving feels like abandonment. Or leaving too early because closeness feels dangerous. And eventually, that strategy becomes pattern. And the pattern becomes our life. So people say, why do I keep ending up here? Why do I keep choosing this? Why does this keep happening to me? And the answer is very simple. Because the wounds was never finished. It never healed. And unfinished wounds deep in our soul always demand repetition. And that's how cycles keep reoccurring to become a pattern. Let me answer a question many people don't ask out loud. Why do we need to heal our soul? Why do we need to heal the pain that we have inside? Why do we need to confront the wound? Why can't we just adapt? Why not just change habits? Why not just pray it away? Why not just try harder? Because behavior, the way we act, the way we respond, the way we react, simply fruit, the fruit of what we have deep down embedded in our soul. It become a root. It become our identity. It become how we think, how we feel, how we act. It becomes who we are. And living with a wound that we cannot verbalize is very exhausting. It's very tiring. So we can learn to manage habits and still feel empty. We can learn to wear a mask and still feel empty. We can learn to show up strong and pretend to be so confident and pretend to be okay. Deep inside, we are empty. Publicly, someone that is wounded, it appears by looking at someone that we are succeeding in life, that we have it all down pack and we are good. But privately, secretly, we are fractured, we are wounded, we are hurt. Because when the soul is wounded, everything flows through that wound. Your decisions, your relationships, your parenting skills, your leadership, your reaction, your tolerance for disrespect, your tolerance for pain. That's why healing the soul matters. Because the soul is where meaning lives. In our soul is where we be who we are. And when the soul is injured, people don't live. People just exist. And that's why I wrote the book, My Mother's Choice, My Destiny. In that book, I took myself on the journey of healing. And there was a time in my life I did not live. I only exist. And there are many watching me right now. You just exist. You just wake up. You go through the motion, the functioning, the performing, the surviving, but you don't feel alive. The truth of the matter is, you were not created to merely exist. You were created to live whole. That's why healing is so important. So now let me say something that carries much weight. If you don't heal what hurts you, you will pass it on to the next generation. You will pass it on to your children. Even if you swear you won't, I won't, I know what to do, I won't. Fortunately, because trauma doesn't transfer only through actions. Trauma, wounds, they transfer through patterns, cycles, through reaction, through emotional absence, through unspoken fear. The next generation doesn't need perfect parents. They need healed adults. They don't need more rules. They need regulation of our emotion. They don't need more lectures, workshops. The next generation need safety. And when a parent, a leader, a caregiver, a grandmother, an aunt never heal their soul, never heal things that happen to them from the childhood, the wounds, the pain, the betrayal, the abuse, the rape, the domestic violence, the child grows up adapting, adapting to what was never addressed. That's how cycles become legacies. But the healing of the soul changes inheritance. The moment we start on the journey, and that's the series we are on, the next 10 episodes, the journey to help you identify that you too fall in this bracket. And you have the power to change the inheritance that you're going to pass on to your children, children. Stops pain from being the family language, how the family respond. It stops silence from being the coping mechanism. It stops survival from being our identity. Healing is not just personal. Healing is generational responsibility. Let me bring this back to you. Healing your soul matters because you deserve more than just getting through life. You deserve joy without guilt, peace without hypervigilance, love without fear, rest without collapse. You deserve relationship that don't replay back old wounds. You deserve a future that isn't secretly running by your past. Healing doesn't erase what happened. Healing changes what controls you. And when the soul is healed, you don't just survive. You choose. You choose differently. You love differently. You respond differently. You live differently. You receive differently. Let me say this gently, but very clearly. You did not choose the wound, but you are responsible for the healing. And healing is not denial. Healing is not pretending. Healing is not masking. Healing is not having a coping mechanism. Healing is not quoting scripture over pain. Healing is not praying it only. Healing is telling the truth without punishing yourself for just surviving. Chapter 1 of my book I wrote about how it all started. Not to stay there, not to relive it, not to build an identity around it, but to stop the cycle, stop the repetition. Because what was never healed kept repeating in my life until someone becomes brave, until I became brave and I start to name it for what it is. And that's why Breaking the Cycle series this year is different. This is not a once episode conversation. In 2026, Breaking the Cycle is committing for 10 weeks of soul healing, 10 intentional weeks of truth telling, 10 weeks of education, 10 weeks of exposure and understanding. We will be bringing in trauma specialists, mental health coaches, psychologists, and professionals who understand how trauma lives in the soul, how trauma lives in the mind, how trauma lives in the body. Not to diagnose it or to diagnose you on television, not to sensationalize pain, but to help you understand what happened to you, what it produced in you, and how to interrupt it responsibly. This is about equipping you, not overwhelming you. This episode stirs something in you. That's not coincidence. That's a recognition that something is wrong. If you know someone that keeps repeating patterns, repeating cycles, you see it in the children, children, and children, and they can't explain it, send this episode to them. If you're a leader, business owner, pastor, a manager, parent, and you don't understand trauma, you are leading people without context. Healing is not soft. Healing is strategic. This year is not about doing more. It's about healing the community deeper. Like this video, share it, tell someone, because silence keeps cycles alive. But truth, but truth interrupts them. So tonight, we begin right here, not with blame, not with shame, but with truth. Before behavior, before patterns, before excuses. We begin before words. Because when the soul is healed, the cycle loses its power. As I wrote in the book, my mother's choices, many choices, became my destiny. This book title speaks for itself because our parents make choices, decisions around us will affect our destiny. And some decisions are very dangerous to our destiny, if I may say that. And in my book, I wrote how my wound started from within my mother's womb. As a baby, without being able to verbalize it, the wound of rejection started in my mother's womb. I learned from very young how to feel not loved, not accepted, not worthy, not enough. And trauma wounds can go so deep in your soul, even as a baby, that it becomes your identity. It becomes the identity that you start to make decisional for your own life. Wounds can make every human being act, react to situation in a very detrimental manner. But a healed soul someone that is healed, that allow the pain to go through them and come out of them and identify that what happened to me wasn't against me. As a matter of fact, it made me stronger. It made me who I am today. That's why the book, My Mother's Choice, My Destiny, has so much power. Because it starts with a wounded child that couldn't speak, that today is a healed individual, a healed adult. Before becoming healed, I too made so many choices that affect my destiny. That's why it's so important to heal our broken heart. That's why it's important to identify the wounds, identify what happened to me. Why is it that I'm broken? Why is it that I feel incomplete? Why is it that I do the things I do that keep putting me in more pain and hurting me more? These series are going to help you identify what broke you. And there are many adults today walking around that cannot verbalize with words what is wrong with them. And there's nothing wrong with you. Something happened to you. And the moment we all can identify what happened to me, how it bruised me, how it wounded me, how it caused deep pain within my heart, in my soul, and it damaged the way I think even about myself. That is the roadmap, the journey. You can call it a business plan of healing, a business model of healing. That's how we start the journey of healing. So, in this series of the 10 weeks, we will talk about the mind, how we think, think, thoughts we think about ourselves, about the people we love, about the people around us. We'll become mindful of how we think because the way we think, we become. There's a scripture in the Bible is that says, the way a man think, so is he. The way we think, we act. The way we perceive things, we do things. So if we can identify how we think, if we can identify that the way our thoughts are distorted, are broken, are envious, are jealous, are ugly, and we can address the way we think, our results will be different. There's a saying, if you want a different result, you need to start to do things different. But I change it tonight. If you want different result, you need to start to change the way you think. We start first with a thought. First, as an architect, before an architect build a house, a building, a structure, they first need to think it. They start to imagine it. They start to see how this building will look like. As a matter of fact, they even add colors, plants, a roadway, gravels. I mean, the end product. They visualize it before the building become a reality. And that's also with our life. When we start to think and imagine our life better, healed, stronger, then we can start to draw how we're gonna reach and we start to walk on the roadmap of healing. Start with the mind. So during this series, we'll talk about the mind, we will talk about the body, our body, because wounds affect our physical body. Wounds, deep wounds in our subconscious, in our soul, in our heart. It will make us sick. It's like the Bible says it's like poison in our body, especially unforgiveness. That's why scientists, doctors cannot Explain how cancer can suddenly show up in someone's body and sometimes within months, the person is no longer with us. Migraines, ulcer, anxiety, depression, it will affect our body eventually when we allow the wounds and the trauma from our childhood grow up, relationship, connection, and it stays in our body. It will make us. During the series, we will talk about relationships, all type of relationship, parent to child relationship, friends, colleague, love relationship, marriage. Because wounds, if they're not healed, they will affect how we relate to one another. But during the series, we will not only talk about what happened and the pain and the hurt. Our aim is to educate you, to guide you on the roadmap of healing and restoration. But tonight, this is just the foundation. Your past may have started it, but you have the power to break it. You did not choose what happened to you. None of us choose the wounds, the pain, the hurt, the ache. I didn't choose it. It started with my mother's choice. But besides, my mother made one choice. It started the wound. And through life, because when you start with wounds, you attract more wounds, pain and hurt. And through life, you, us also start to make choices that affect and add and afflict us more, cause more pain and wounds. And the thing is with wounds, and we learn through life that we allow just the first healing scar. You know, when you touch your hand and you get the first layer of scar on top of it, it looks well from the outside. Mhm. We look healed from the outside. Looks fine from the outside. But if we take our finger and we press on that wound, we press it, it will hurt. It will hurt a lot, depending the wound. And sometimes it can start to bleed as well, again. And there are many people walking around. And in my book, I wrote my memoir about how I walked through life with a scar that is healed from the outside, but inside, I was still bleeding through life. And there are many of you watching me tonight. We all have different wounds. We all have different scars. But it's important that the scar is healed outside and really from the inside. And we can turn that scar into stars and something beautiful. But when we pass on to the next generation, our children, how do we pass on? As I said earlier, is the way we react in life, the way we speak, the way we do things, the way we say things. We develop healed, healthy patterns, healthy way of doing things, the opposite of what we were doing. And we are healed. So there are many walking around us daily, reacting and screaming and having all kinds of behavior that make people know don't want to deal with you because you are always drama, you're always problem, you're always angry, you're always this and you're always that, because they cannot see beyond the healed scar from the outside. People don't realize that we are wounded and we are hurt. And we go through relationship to relationship. And I'm not talking only love, relationship, friendship, colleagueship, wounded, bleeding, crying out for help in ways that we cannot express with our mouth. But you can choose the healing. You didn't start a cycle, you didn't start a pain, but you can be the one who ends it. You can be the one that put a stop to the generational cycle, the patterns. You can choose your new legacy and inheritance that you're going to leave behind for your children and your family. And when you heal your soul, when you heal your wound, when you let go of that pain and hurt, that when you press on that wound, we talk about that subject, we smell something familiar, we see something looks familiar, we no longer feel the pain. And that's when the cycle loses his authority. This is not about fixing yourself. This is about freeing yourself, being free from the inside. If this episode spoke to you, as I said earlier, don't keep it to yourself. Like it, share it, share it with someone. Share it especially with the youth. Tell someone, because someone you love is surviving in silence. You never know, because people don't talk about the pain. And that's why we started with this talk show. We talk about things that we don't talk about, that we usually don't discuss. What is called taboo, and keep us on to generation to generation. In silence keeps cycles alive. But truth breaks it. Truth breaks domestic violence. Truth breaks the pattern of low self-esteem. Truth. This is breaking the cycle. This is the soul healing year. And this is only the beginning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for being brave enough to listen to our episode. Thank you for being brave enough to share our episode. Till next time, keep on standing, keep on healing, and keep on breaking the cycle.